Here at People Forward Network, we pride ourselves on delivering stellar shows for people-first business leaders just like you. And some episodes are just too impactful to share only once. Today, we're re-releasing one of those gems. Enjoy!
Information discovered. When I have that aha moment as an individual, that information is more powerful than information delivered when somebody else gives it to me, because it shifts the ownership equation to me versus the person that's giving me the information.
Welcome to the Unleashing Leaders podcast, where we work with willing leaders to accelerate the changes you seek. We'll learn from the experiences of different leaders facing real challenges and distill practical, purposeful steps to apply in your context. I'm Lee Scott, your curious co-pilot. Together, let's make positive changes for our companies and communities. Welcome to the Unleashing Leaders podcast. Today, we are joined by John Crowder. He is the Vice President of the Healthcare Vertical for Integrity Solutions based out of Nashville, Tennessee. Today, he is going to be sharing some insights on how leaders can have a much greater impact by shifting their mindset from listening to respond to listening to understand. With that, John, let's dive into how can this mindset be done and why might it matter for leaders seeking to have a greater impact?
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to join you and to talk a little bit about leadership today.
Excellent. Well, John, first of all, for our listeners, could you give us a little context of your current industry and what your role in that and how that kind of relates to our topic today, looking at how leaders can be more effective at elevating the performance of their teams? Tell us a little bit about that and a little bit about your prior history as well, too, which had a pretty cool resume leading up to this.
Well, Integrity Solutions, we've been around for 50 years. The founder was a gentleman by the name of Ron Willingham, who wrote a book called Integrity Selling for the 21st Century. We got our start as a sales and leadership consulting firm. So we went into organizations and taught sales organizations, how do you sell at a high level? What does advanced consultative sales, enterprise level selling look like? What does it feel like? And a part of that, of course, leading sales teams, helping grow and develop them. And we've got a pretty impressive clientele. We have probably one of the biggest chemical companies in the world, the fifth largest bank in the United States, a railroad, probably one of the world's top paint manufacturers, and the top 3 medical device companies in the world.
So you guys are looking at how do we do a better job of doing selling with integrity, which in many respects is almost synonymous with leadership. Leaders are trying to influence, they're trying to advocate, but they're doing it with integrity. Like, how do we do it to uplift and add value from a servant leadership perspective, from an educational perspective? And you're doing it across many industries, but your particular area happens to be healthcare. It's a very challenging industry that you're trying to help folks be able to make informed decisions on what they do.
Absolutely. When you talk about the outcomes, that ability to have trust and to be able to sell effectively and do the right things the right way and make a positive connection. Are our teams going in there to provide service, or are they going in there to really shape and change appropriately the way care is delivered? That's a different skill set. And so we teach those folks how to do it. But from a leadership perspective, we say to our leaders quite often, if you want your sales teams to be consultative sellers, you have to be a consultative leader, which is a seek to understand before being understood approach to leadership, which is something I'm sure we'll talk about today.
Absolutely. And I like that distinction that you guys are like, look, how do you lead a team of other sales folks, which is very similar to like, how do you lead a team of other leaders? How are you uplifting them? How are you helping them be able to address the impediments that you inevitably encounter? But your focus, to your point, is not on the service or the product, but it is the outcome for your customer. I think that's inherent to how you guys approach things. And there's just so many parallels with our philosophy of leadership. It's just great to have you on the show to be able to dive into these.
We try very hard to live by the example of our company name, Integrity Solutions. And so when you want to operate with that value system, you have to have a way to execute in that area and show respect and empathy for others. And how do you connect with people on a human level? When you stop talking about yourself, about your product, about your organization, and in the medical field in particular, you keep the patient in the forefront. You keep the physician in the forefront. That comes through, and that's your value system. When you learn to approach and connect with people at that level, it comes through in your actions, and therefore you're able to connect with people at a deeper level.
Well, John, you shared with me a pivotal moment in your career where you really became present to the power that when a leader approaches situations or conversations with this mindset. Can you tell us a little bit about this amazing mentor lady that you had, how that sparked this passion for knowing how to have leadership with integrity?
This lady's name is Karen Martin Settlemeyer, and she was my boss for a number of years back when I got in the industry 20 plus years ago. She was just a great influence on me, and she was going through this process that a lot of managers do, and she was in problem solving mode. She wanted to come in and address the concerns that I had. Through this process, there wasn't clarity about really what was going on. And she was so astute. She sat back, she put her hands in her lap, and she said, "John, I'm sorry. Explain to me everything that's going on." Once I explained the entire process, I answered a few questions that she had. She got clarity on what we needed to do. Then together we developed a solution to be able to move forward. And it was so profound for me because I'd never had a leader at that level give me the time and listen to what I had to say before helping me solve my problems.
And that resulted in you guys having a much fuller conversation about what your options were. You're a new person, you're trying to do a good job. How did that affect accountability afterwards as well, too? So in terms of the innovation of the ideas and the accountability, could you elaborate just a little bit more on what you got from that? And then we can go into how do we replicate that with others.
It's one of my favorite fundamental things about leading people. And there's a saying that a friend of mine had: information discovered. When you have that aha moment, it's more powerful than information delivered. So what that means is that when I say it, I own it. When my boss says it and they give it to me, they own it. And so where does the accountability lie? And the other thing that you get when you allow individuals to talk, to share their ideas, you learn what they know and you learn what to fill in as the manager, as the leader, as the coach. What we teach is let's keep that and let's seek to understand category. What do I mean by that? Let's say there are 5 things of any particular task that your direct report needs to accomplish, and they can verbalize and they're committed to 3 of the 5. There's 2 remaining things that they need to do to be successful. Do you rush in and tell them what to do? We don't subscribe to that. What we say is, let's ask them, how are you going to get there? What if we did this? Who else needs to be involved? What would it look like if? How could we do that? Because again, as these folks begin to verbalize what they want to accomplish, as they're having those aha moments, they're also creating accountability for themselves.
So let's start breaking this down a little bit more. You guys have kind of a model that you use to think of what are the right questions to ask and at the right sequence and right order. So could you introduce us that model and then maybe give us a couple of examples of some of the starter ones that a leader could replicate when they're trying to get them to be as inspired by the information discovered versus the information delivered?
Our coaching model is really simple. It's an ask, listen, coach, praise, and challenge. And we coach to those specific steps, much like you would coach to a golf swing. It's the stance, it's the ball position, it's the grip, it's the backswing, it's the follow through. We break down this coaching interaction steps so that people can understand and fine tune their skills specific to each one of them. And so the first one is ask. I think we have to be careful about the questions that we ask. We don't want to ask questions that make people become defensive. We don't want to ask them, what did you do wrong? Which can cause people to raise their defensive guards.
John, you're denying me for all the fun. Like, what were you thinking? What's wrong with you? Why are you trying to do this to me? But you're saying those aren't the right kind of questions to ask.
You nailed it. And you know what? If you don't have the right perspective on what you're trying to accomplish as a leader, you can take that punitive approach. When we have interactions, we ask questions. What went well? Let's establish what the individual did well first. What would you do different? If you could do it again, what would you do better? How would you change the next interaction? What would good look like moving forward? Again, we want to create an environment where they feel positive about sharing their vision of the next steps. And we want to develop trust with them. That gives you the ability as a leader to validate what they're doing well, but augment the things that they need to add to their decision process.
You would think you're like, well, of course, if you ask the question, you have to listen. But a lot of leaders don't get that part right. You start thinking about what you're going to say instead of listening for what they are saying. So what are some things that you do to keep your focus in the listening mode after you've asked one of those powerful questions?
I think a lot of it starts with what your belief system is about what leadership is. And we have a congruence model that we teach that helps leaders get in alignment with what is true leadership. If your belief system is that leading people is telling them what to do, then you're going to listen to respond. We want people to have a leadership value system that they're trying to grow and develop the performance of others. And that means when we listen to understand. And it's amazing. It's a little tweak and it sounds simple, But the impact that it has on the people that you're coaching is remarkable because they're going to be able to sense really quickly. You're listening to respond to tell me what to do, or you're listening to understand the situation and then dialogue through what the solution is. It impacts trust. And we know that trust is an important factor in any good relationship. And so one of the ways you can convey that trust is through listening to understand.
One of the theme across a lot of our conversations is this notion of limiting beliefs. And you just named a really powerful one. If your belief of leadership is the value I bring is through the information I put in, well, then that's going to result in a listening that sounds like listening to respond. Whereas if I just try to use willpower to change that and just say, no, really this time, listen to what John's trying to say. In the moment, the stress, the addiction is going to be so strong, you're going to go right back to listening to respond. But I heard you say a different belief.
So it really starts with what your view of leadership is. So if my view of leadership is I'm telling people what to do, I'm listening to respond because you give me an answer and I'm going to tell you what you need to do to fix it. That's different than helping people grow and to develop into new skill sets, new positions, new opportunities. So then I want to listen to understand, evaluate where they are in the process, where the blind spots are through this dialogue of question and answer so that they have ownership in it. That's how we grow and develop people. People don't grow and develop by us telling them what to do. We have that preconceived belief, and a lot of first frontline managers do that. Managing people and telling people what to do is a foundation of overall leadership, but that's not how we grow and develop people. We grow and develop people through having them understand, how do we do it better? When the how comes from me, I'm managing them. The how has to come from them. And once we've established how do we get better, they own that. And then we augment what that plan looks like through this dialogue phase.
Great distinction. And then once you truly believe that your value is to help them grow, that's an unlimited energy source. Now, all this innovation and all this collaboration is now possible. Give us a practical example of it. So your environment is you're helping organizations that are trying to reach more of their customers to get the benefit of whatever service or product that they're providing. And they've got a sales team that's out there trying to educate their customers. And maybe that sales team's struggling to hit their performance marks. So they're not converting the opportunities, not generating the leads, whatever the impediment is, right? So let's just take the ask, listen model by itself. I'm a new mid-career sales agent and I'm struggling. I'm not bringing the right energy to the equation. Let's model a little bit of what that would look like. So what would be an opening question you have for me when you're trying to help me reach more customers with a product that I do know is good and is valuable and has got worth? And then what might the listening be and what might that dialogue look like? I think if folks got to see an example of it, that'll really make these principles come alive.
One of the things that I would say is there are a lot of people in medical sales that are lay people, really sharp, established, college graduate individuals, but they're not licensed practitioners. But yet they have to go in and talk with the chief of cardiology or the chief of surgery or the chief of emergency medicine about their product, how it may apply to the care of their patients. And you can imagine that that's intimidating. I have to go in and have a conversation. So I believe in my product. I believe in the value of what we do. I'm committed to it, but I don't want to interact because I don't believe I can have that conversation with this particular provider. And so the question might be, let's understand, what is the obstacle? What is your fear? What is your concern? And then, okay, what's it going to take to help you get over that? What would good look like? Who's the best person? What resources do you need? What can I do? What would this look like at the end? Now, they may map out a nice plan, but they may not be familiar with the resources or some of the support that we can give them. So we said, okay, that's great. What if we did this? How would that help you? And of course, we have to set expectations around that and then benchmark that. Did we overcome this? Do we see the conversations come that we need to have to be able to advance the use of our product appropriately?
It's basically a variation of the imposter syndrome. Like, hey, I'm not good enough to be able to share this good idea. But this pattern, John, could equally apply to a mid-level manager trying to advocate for a process improvement to a higher level manager, or a manager that's in a different chain of command, so to speak, or for somebody on the front line who's trying to influence somebody on another side of the line to do something different, and they don't have that authority. So anytime there's that leading up, this pattern emerges. And I think leadership is not mostly down. Actually, a lot of leadership is leading to folks who we don't have direct authority over. We may not even necessarily have a higher classification than them. This pattern, I think, is way more universal than what we're talking about here, but it's such a great example of it. So when you ask the questions of them, What does an answer look like? And then how do you avoid the temptation to just say, get back in there and get it done? How would you overcome that?
It really comes down to, are you trying to convince somebody of something? Think of the pressure that puts on an individual. I am a layperson that's going in and convince this chief of cardiology to use my product to the magic of my words. They're going to laugh me out of the office. So let's reverse the equation. Let's not put the pressure on ourselves. And I'm not trying to put a pressure on the physician or who I'm managing up to as well, but with sincere desire to understand, where are you and where do you want to be? What would good look like? How do we get there? How do we work together? Now, all of a sudden, the pressure is not on me to try to convince you to do something, but the sense of accomplishment and satisfaction I get when I understand what your problems are, what your view of the future is. Now I can help you get there. Which would you rather be known as? Somebody that provides great service to your account or somebody that's a great problem solver for your account? Which one would give you more energy? Which one would feel like you're being more accomplished and more successful? I want to be the change agent. I want to be the problem solver. And so when I get to that point, now my energy goes up because the value proposition that I deliver is very different. This is what happens in our industry, and it happens to managers as well. When people believe that the value that they bring comes through the information they provide, once they've provided that information, it's gone, how about this? The value that I bring are through the solutions I provide. But I can't offer you solutions unless I know what your problems are and I know where you want to go. And then we can work together. That's a whole different energy for people. It applies to whether you're selling or leading people.
What's neat about it is it removes the constraint that I have to be in a position of higher authority or more expertise in order to convince you. In fact, what you're really demonstrating here is servant leadership. Like if I come to you with somebody who has more experience or higher authority, I want to understand you. I want to see what the problems are. And then I'm happy to share with you something that might help you. So I'm now literally in a subservient relative position to you, but that allows me then to lead and influence from a place of service versus a place of authority. And if that is the case, then I can be 24 years old and be of value to a customer that has more years, more licenses, more credibility, and be high impact. And I also like how you said, it's like, it also allows it to not just be a single transaction. Because if it was just a matter of me giving you information, that was one and done. But if it's me being able to understand and get you access to solutions, you're going to want me around for a lot longer than that. So I like both of those. It removes the barrier and it sets it up to be perpetual.
Absolutely. When you sincerely care about your clients, when you sincerely care about the people that you're managing, this becomes much easier to execute. However, we often have to break old habits. So we're going to add on to some old leadership habits over a period of time. And it takes some humility. When we seek to understand approach, requires that you have some humility and some desire to help others. So that plays a big factor into whether or not you can execute these kind of relationships. And you're right. There's two things we hear in the medical industry by frontline managers. Number one is, I don't have time to coach. And from senior leaders, what they say is, my sales manager is trying to lead their team from behind a desk. Why is that? It's the same outcome. Managers are not out in the field. And the reason is this: if I think the value I bring is through the information I provide, and I've got a tenured sales rep out there and I've already told them 6 times how to do their job, I've got no more value for them. So the value I can bring to them is, let me be your administrative assistant. So I'm going to become the administrator. That's because I don't know how to take them from where they are to where they want to be from a developmental standpoint. When managers learn to make that switch on how to grow and develop people, they will spend more time in the field because they feel better about the value they bring.
That is super powerful. Do you find that this is a learnable skill? Do you find folks who have been reinforced and successful to a degree based on these alternatives? Like, yeah, they are super knowledgeable and they've been rewarded and elevated and promoted because of that expertise. Or do you find that actually through some dialogue and maybe experiencing it directly, that this is a learnable skill?
Absolutely learnable. And what I would say is most effective leaders that I know, number one, is they're sincere, they care about others. They realize that the success of the leader comes through the success of others. I think the other part of it is they're hardwired to be continuous learners. Again, they have that humility about themselves. I was listening to a leadership podcast the other day, and oddly enough, this leader leads 400 people, said he is learning how to listen to understand because he has had a listen to respond process his entire leadership career. tenured guy, advanced in his career, leading 400 people, and he's had that aha moment. And you know what? How in tune is he going to be when he interacts with others? And that skill now comes out because when I put it out in the universe, I own it now. I'm going to be a great listener, and I'm going to listen to understand. We're going to evaluate before we decide what the plan is moving forward.
Yeah, I find it can be a career limiter where maybe early in your career, you're being advanced and promoted based on your knowledge and your ability to perform. But then you reach a certain point where it almost becomes impossible with the rate of change and how quickly things are evolving for you to be the resident expert when you're not doing that thing every single day. And so there's this knowledge inversion. And what he's seeing is like, all right, in order for me to be able to go beyond where I'm at, I got to make that switch. Not only because it works better, but because it's just physically impossible to be the person over 400 people where you know more than all 400 of those people. Like, that's just not going to happen. And that's where the humility kicks in. And it's so liberating, John, because you're like, if you don't have to be the expert in everything and you're not feeling like you have to, and they're not expecting you to be, well, then we can be sincere and authentic and even vulnerable. I can say like, you know what? I actually don't know the answer to the challenge that you're facing right now. But you know what I can do is I can help you work together so we can figure out a solution to it. And it might be one that nobody's ever done before. And then we can share with everybody else and we'll both get credit for it, right? But I think the reality is that whether you're doing it or not, you'll reach a point where you just can't do it anymore. And maybe that's when the breakthrough finally happens.
One of the exercises that we take our development candidates through is really cathartic for them. And think about a time when somebody saw something in you that you didn't see in yourself. What did that make you feel like when you grew beyond your boundaries of self-belief, the encouragement, the vision that you didn't see in yourself and they saw in you? Now, how do you multiply that? How do you execute that for those that report to you? How do you make them have that feeling? How do you give them that growth and that development? What does that do to trust, relationship, retention, productivity? All of those things increase when you learn that skill, when you show that belief in others that you can do more than what you're able to do. And it's not going to get there by you telling them. Here's the other piece I want to just make a quick caveat on. We can't create an environment where people are afraid to fail. Failure is an opportunity to learn. And when we shut that down, people will revert back to what their self-belief is. They'll stop growing. They'll stay in their comfort zone. We want to get them outside of that comfort zone. And unfortunately, making mistakes and being able to do things better is a part of that growth process. Let's not take that away from them.
I'm teaching my younger kids right now, John, to play Risk. Did you ever play that?
I loved it when I was growing up.
So rediscovered it recently. And to your point, it's not that you never give information, but that you run out of that pretty quickly and you want to switch into then being able to listen to understand, right? So gave him some minimal instructions on the game. But if I just kept talking about all the permutations and all the strategies and all the nuances, there was nothing more getting in their heads. So it's like just enough. So they're like, okay, let's play. And so then we throw the little armies out on there. So then the first time they played, there was no strategy. They didn't know. It was just devastating, which was really the point of this whole exercise. At first, they were really frustrated. I was like, no, time out. Look, you guys made some mistakes. And so now the very next game, his placement of his troops has evolved. He's just a little bit more purposeful about what he's doing. And it's like, if I had tried to explain that to him, I'd still be talking about it and he wouldn't have gotten it. So I think this notion of balance as a leader is like give a little bit of instruction to orient so they at least have some context. Sure, fine, time and place for that. But then very quickly shift into this ask, listen, coach, praise challenge that you're talking about so that they can now discover what are the strategies that are going to really work here. And you know what? They might find something that you never saw coming. Next thing you know, they're mopping the floor with you.
You learn so much by doing. It's a part of medicine, right? They let the residents and the young physicians actually do the procedures because in the teaching institutions, it's how they learn.
That's why they call it practicing medicine. They're not doing medicine, they're practicing, which is a little scary when you're the one under the knife.
The good news is every place I've ever been, they have great attendants, making sure that things are done the right way. Telling people what to do from a compliance, from an HR, from a legal standpoint is a part of being a leader. Growing and developing people are different skills, getting them to not be afraid to fail, giving them responsibilities beyond their current level, and then telling people what to do as management, having them understand how to do it, not telling them how to do it, because then I'm reverting back to management. How do we get better? What does good look like? What would you do next? Those are how type questions to get them to verbalize it. And then the third piece of it is leadership. And it's the why is it important that we do it this way? Why is it important to the patients? Why is it important to physicians? Why is it important to the hospital? Why is it important to your organization? Why is it important to your team? And why is it important to you? Why is it important that we sell with integrity? Why is it important that we lead with integrity? What do we get when we are good listeners? That ingrains the behavior into their value system. It's telling them what to do when that's appropriate, helping them to grow into how to do things better, and then tying it up with the why so that you can secure that development of behavior over time.
Outstanding. That is a great recap right there. John, this is all fabulous. If you were to summarize, what's one aspect of being an unleashed leader to you?
I think back of the leaders that touched my life and how powerful it was and how hard you wanted to work for them because of the belief and the faith and the encouragement that they gave to you. It is an attitude that I aspire to lead by and represents a part of an organization that I want to be a member of. It's those kinds of leaders that I think are unleashing the ability, not just with themselves, but the people that report to them.
Fabulous. I'd subscribe for that. Sign me up, my friend. Well, John, it has been great to have you on the show. Is there anywhere that people could follow up with you and find out more about what you guys are doing, or maybe reach out to get access to this amazing integrity selling model across industries?
They certainly can visit our website at integritysolutions.com. And if they wanted to reach out to me, I certainly can be reached through my LinkedIn. It's John Crowder, and you can probably find me under Integrity Solutions in there somewhere. I don't know how many John Crowders are out there on LinkedIn. My email address is jcrowder@integritysolutions.com.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for being so generous with your time today and sharing some insights that you are well compensated for providing these other organizations to give everybody on the show here a taste. John, was there anything else you wanted to share before we wrap, something that was on your mind?
Just appreciate the opportunity. I think there's a huge need now more than ever for strong, effective leadership. The number one reason that people leave an organization is because their boss. And these companies know that there's a price to pay for that. When we give them the development that they need for production, the employee engagement, retention, all improve. So if you've invested in hiring a lot of good salespeople, invest in your leaders and helping them stay and be more productive.
Fabulous. Thanks again, John.
Thank you, Lee.
Thank you for joining us today on the Unleashing Leaders podcast. Subscribe so you don't miss a moment that could be the key to your next breakthrough. Let's stay connected and contribute together by grabbing that @Unleashing Leaders handle on LinkedIn, YouTube, or your favorite network. This is Lee Scott. Keep learning, loving, and leading. Our future and our communities are counting on us.